So Bradley Beal has officially agreed to sign with the LA Clippers after his contract buyout from the Phoenix Suns. Truthfully, I'm not moved by this. I don't think the Clippers are some new super team like a lot of people are saying, and that's because those people are fooled by names on a piece of paper. And the game isn't played on paper. Like, someone should tell the Clippers front office that, because their team building strategy for the last several seasons has been to acquire the biggest names possible and hope it works out. And it never does. Like, it's 2025. What is a backcourt of James Harden and Bradley Beal doing? It's certainly not scaring me, and I don't think it scares the Miami Heat either. That's why I don't really believe they were ever truly interested in Bradley Beal. I know there's been a lot of conflicting reports, but certainly after they got Norman Powell, they didn't want Beal anymore. And I believe that Norman Powell is a better player. I think he's a better defender. I think he's more efficient. So I'm cool with that. I never even really liked Bradley Beal that much just because I don't see him as a Heat culture guy. I don't think he truly prioritizes winning. And that's because he always got the most money possible, which I'm cool with that. I'm not going to hate on him for getting his bag. He deserved it. But at the same time, you can't have your cake and eat it too. And there was a lot of interviews where Bradley Beal's like, oh, I just want to win. I don't know why my team suck. And it's like, it's because you're Bradley Beal and you have a supermax contract that you're not really worth. So it's kind of hard to build a contender around you. So I never really wanted Bradley Beal, but I know some Heat fans disagreed. They were hoping that the Heat could get him with their last open roster spot. So that begs the question, what do the Miami Heat do now? As it stands right now, which of course it could change. They could make some trades to acquire more roster spots, shed some salary. But as it stands right now, they got one open roster spots. They're a few $1 million over the luxury tax, but $4 million under the first apron. So if the Heat do decide to fill this last roster spot, I strongly believe that it would not be for more than a minimum contract, just because they would want to avoid the first apron at all costs. If anything, they're probably more likely not to fill this roster spot just because I think they desperately want to get under the luxury tax, which they actually have all season to do. They can operate the entire season above the tax, but then shed enough salary on the last day of the season to get under the tax, and that is enough to avoid the repeaters tax. So maybe they don't make any moves for a while. Maybe they keep this open roster spot to mid-season to give them some flexibility in the trade markets, or maybe they use it to get someone who's bought out in March. So that remains to be seen. But I still wanted to look at a few guys that I think that he could target right now, because I do think there's some good players left in free agency that can maybe help us. I think the Miami Heat's roster overall is relatively deep. You know, I think we're good in the wing position specifically, but the two biggest things that I think they need and I want to target in this video is size off the bench. I know you got Vlad Golden on a two-way, but I think they would prefer to look for someone better. And then also a true point guard, because they still don't have a real facilitator, at least not while Kasparis is still developing, of course. So ideally, I'd want to get one of those two prototypes, and I'd like them to be under 30 years old, just because you're not looking to win now. I'd rather get someone who's a bit younger. Maybe he can grow with the team. Unless you get LeBron. If you get LeBron, okay, go out, get the best player available. But until that happens, I'm going to try to target guys who are mostly younger. Not everyone will fit this criteria, but I still compiled a list of 15 guys that either I'm interested in or I've heard rumored around the Miami Heat. So we're going to look at some big man first. The first two are a couple of reunion players. The first one being Precious Achiuwa, who the Heat have a chance to right their wrong, considering they traded him and Goran for Kyle Lowry. I guess trading Goran was the more sad part, but Precious never really panned out so far. He hasn't been a bad player, just not a great one. And certainly not as good as Tyrese Maxey, who was taken one pick after him. But anyways, he's been fine. You know, last year with New York, he averaged about 7 and 6 and 20 minutes a night, played 57 games for them. But ideally, he's not the type of center I want. I want a big, bruising center that could guard the other team's best big man, be a great rebounder. And at 6'8", Precious is just a bit undersized. He's still a good switchy defender, just not the type of big that I would like. Some Heat fans think that he's some stretch four, and that's not the case. Like, just because he does shoot threes doesn't mean that he can. He's been under 30% from three every year of his career except that first year in Toronto. So I'm good on Precious. Although he's only 25, maybe they could bring some untapped potential out of him, but I think I'm good on that one. The next one, though, I am interested in a reunion. Let's bring Thomas Bryant back, baby. Listen, he's only 27 years old. He's got great size, 6'10", 248. He's not a good defender, but he always brought a lot of energy to the Heat. And since we traded him to Indiana, he did the same thing for them. Had some really nice games in their deep playoff run to the NBA Finals. So I would take him as a nice guy to bring some energy, spark the team coming off the bench, for 10 minutes a night. And he's better than Cody Zeller and Dwayne Dedmon. That's the type of big you're talking about with a minimum contract. So by all means, I would be cool with bringing back Thomas Bryant. The next 4 centers I have here are ones that are more young. The first one I have listed is Charles Bassey, who the Heat just played against when they played Boston in the Summer League. And Bassey's having a good Summer League, averaging 15 points, 11 rebounds, 70% from the field, 2 blocks a night. Does have some good size to him, 6'10", 235, a little bit of NBA experience, playing 4 seasons between Philly and San Antonio. So he's never really showed a lot of production in the NBA just because of the limited playing time. But he's 24 years old, and maybe he's finally starting to realize his potential since he's playing so well in Summer League. So I'd be interested to see what the Heat can make out of him. The next guy I have is Bol, another one the Heat can right their wrongs for because they traded him and KZ Okpala, they traded him in a few second-round picks for KZ Okpala on draft night. Neither guy has really panned out in the NBA, but considering Bol is actually still in the league, I guess he's a better player than KZ. Of course, he's not really the type of big that I want. He's not a defensive big or anything like that, but he's still 7'1", with some handle. His three-point percentage hasn't been great in the league, but he can shoot it. And I'm just very curious to see what the Heat can do with someone of his type of potential. A lot of the projects the Heat take on, they're a bunch of small, gritty white guys that try hard. It's like, take on a 7'1" guy that could dribble. Let's see what you can make out of him. I would just be curious to see, although he's not the exact type of big that I want. He's had a productive season in the NBA. Didn't play much last year with Phoenix, but 3 years ago, he played 70 games with the Magic, averaged 9 and 6 on 55% from the field. So he's not a bum, only 25 years old. I wonder if the Heat can make something out of him. Next, I got Christian Koloko, the 7'1", 230-pound center, also 25 years old. Has a little bit of NBA experience, but he never really did much. Even in Summer League, the numbers don't stand out at you, at only averaging 8 points and 4 rebounds, 2 blocks, though, in Summer League this season. But he's got good size, and he's young. What we say, 25 years old? Yeah, I just wonder if the Heat can make something out of that. There's some blood clot issues. That's why he missed 2 seasons ago. Obviously, that's scary for Heat fans. It's reminiscent of the Chris Bosh situation, but Koloko is back. He's healthy, and I would just be interested if the Heat could make something out of someone of his size. A former 33rd overall pick, so there was some potential there coming out of college. Actually played at Arizona with Pelle Larsson, so I wonder if the Heat already did a little bit of scouting on Koloko, but I'm curious to see what ends up happening with him. He was on a 2-way contract last year with the Lakers. Maybe they re-sign him to that, but if not, I might prefer him on a 2-way over Vlad Golden. I just think there's some more potential there. And then the last young center that I want to talk about is Kai Jones, the 6'11" athletic freak who was drafted 19th overall by Charlotte just a few years ago in 2021. Now, the Hornets ended up waiving him pretty quickly for some off-the-court issues. As reports put it, he displayed bizarre behavior on social media, which included criticism of his teammates, incoherent speech, and declarations of being the greatest basketball player of all time. I do remember when Kai Jones was crashing out on IG Live. I don't know the full backstory there, but I still think he's a talented player. He spent last season on a couple of 2-way contracts between the Clippers and Dallas. And with Dallas, he played 12 games, 21 minutes a night, and averaged 11 and 7. So obviously, he has nice size, he has great athleticism, and he's still young enough that I think there's some untapped potential there that if you got him in a system like the Miami Heat, I think maybe they could turn him into a pretty good rotation player. So I'd be curious to see what the Heat could do with Kai Jones. But now I want to talk about a few older centers that I'm really not interested in at all. The first name I've heard thrown around is Bismack Biyombo, who, yes, he used to kill the Heat back in the day, but that was like 10 years ago at this point. Like, he's 6'8", 32 years old with zero offensive game whatsoever. I'm good on Bismack Biyombo. Another Raptors center that I'm also good on is Chris Boucher. He's been linked to the Miami Heat a lot, and I get it. You know, he's 6'9", can block some shots, but he's not great defensively anywhere else because he's very skinny, only 200 pounds. He's also 32 years old. Definitely has a better game than Biyombo offensively. You know, he can shoot threes a little bit, but what's a 32-year-old Chris Boucher going to do for the Miami Heat? Like, I'm good on that. Another name that I saw is Alex Len, who I honestly hate, because back in the day, he used to have beef with my boy Hassan Whiteside, where one game Whiteside was cooking, and then Alex Len got mad. He pushed Whiteside, and then Whiteside grabbed him and tackled him to the ground. Y'all remember that? I love that. And it was funny because Whiteside actually got a lesser fine than Alex Len did. So Alex Len got his ass beat. He got dominated in the paint. Then he got the bigger fine. So I kind of look at Alex Len as a bit of a loser since then. But he's been a fine backup center for many years now. He'd be another Dwayne Dedmon or Cody Zeller if the Heat were to get him. But at 32 years old, I don't exactly see the point. But now I want to talk about a couple of guards that maybe the Heat could be interested in. The first one is Malcolm Brogdon. They've been linked to him a lot because he's been a guy that's always had a really great assist-to-turnover ratio. Some years he's been great at shooting. Other years he's been subpar. But that's because there's also been a lot of inconsistencies in terms of his playing time due to injuries. Last season, he only played 24 games, and he really hasn't been healthy for several seasons prior to that. Several years ago, I would have loved Malcolm Brogdon as a true point guard for this team. But right now, I think I'm good on that. And even then, I don't know if he would accept the minimum contract. His market might still be higher just because he is a talented player. He's just coming off a year where he made $22 million. So we'll have to see what his market is. Speaking of guards that just got paid, let's talk about Damian Lillard, where the Heat have another chance to right their wrong from 2023, where Dame said Miami and Miami only, and then they didn't get him. I don't know if that's Pat Riley's fault for lowballing the Blazers or if Joe Cronin was just a bum asshole who didn't want to do business. I think it was maybe a little bit of both. But I think right now the Heat do have a chance to sign Dame. Now that he's a free agent, he's going to get all of his money from Milwaukee since they stretched him. So we definitely have a chance to sign him for cheap. And that's the good part. It's a low risk, potentially high reward situation. So from that aspect, I don't hate it. But truthfully, I wouldn't be thrilled if we got Dame, just because I do find it hard to get optimistic about a guy of his age coming off an Achilles injury, because he's already not going to play this season. So by the time he plays again, he's going to be 35, about 36 years old. And I'm not sure how good the Heat will be at that point anyways. So now you just got a 36-year-old Dame that's coming off an Achilles. Like, I wouldn't be thrilled about it, but again, if you can get him for cheap, it's a low risk and I'd be fine with it. Next, I want to talk about Garrison Matthews, a guy that I hate and have hated for quite a long time, which is exactly why I want him on the Miami Heat. Of course, I never liked him because he is a random scrub Heat killer Hall of Famer, but even then, I didn't like him since college. He went to Lipscomb, which is in the same conference as Florida Gulf Coast, and when I went to FGCU, he killed us one time in a conference tournament game where we had a chance to go to March Madness. So I've hated Garrison Matthews since then. Then in the NBA, no matter what team he was on, he's always killed the Heat, and that's exactly why I think he can help us now. Same reason I used to hate Wayne Ellington. Wayne came to Miami, shot great, and I do think that Garrison Matthews could help provide some shooting to a team that still needs it. I know they got Norman Powell, they got Fontecchio, who's had some inconsistencies in terms of his shooting percentage, but Garrison Matthews is a career 41% three-point shooter on 5 attempts, 28 years old, and an absolute sniper. Actually a little bit bigger than Fontecchio too. NBA.com has him as an inch shorter, but about 6 pounds heavier. So maybe he could play a similar role as Fontecchio if the Heat were looking to add some more shooting. And the last 3 names I want to look at are some potential reunion names for Miami. The first one is another shooter in Alec Burks, who I think had a good season last year for the Heat, but he's turning 34 years old in a couple of days, so I think that relationship is kind of over, especially since shooting, again, isn't as critical as it was before Norman Powell. If they were going to go for some more shooting, I'd rather them go for the younger Garrison Matthews, who is also a little bit of a better shooter as well. The next name I want to look at is our guy, Drew Smith, who I think a lot of Heat fans are assuming is already on the team, but he's technically not. So if they were to give him a standard deal, he would take up that last roster spot. But at this point, I think Drew Smith is more likely to get another 2-way contract just because he's still recovering from his torn Achilles that he had last December. So he's probably several months away from actual 5-on-5 basketball contact. So I could see the Heat giving him a 2-way contract just to kind of monitor his recovery process. And if he can get back to the level he was playing last year pre-injury, then I'm cool bringing him back. He's 27 years old, so not as young as people think, but if you have a defensive point guard rotation of Davion Mitchell and Drew Smith, that's just a nightmare for other teams, and I think it'd be fun to see. Speaking of two-way guards that can play a little bit of defense, the last guy that I want to talk about in this video is one that I am very excited to say has been impressing in workouts lately, and that's our man, Victor Oladipo, who has said on multiple occasions that he does not want to retire. He's looking for a comeback, and then he was just in some 5-on-5 game with apparently several NBA scouts there, and word on the street is he balled out, which makes me thrilled to hear because, of course, Oladipo, one of the nicest, most genuine guys that you've ever seen. Between all the clips and interviews and just things that people behind the scenes have said about him, truly seems like one of the nicest people in the world. And all the injury, the misfortune that he's had, it couldn't have happened to a worse person. Like, he did not deserve any of that. But that being said, he's also one of the most resilient people out there. Very clearly, he's busted his ass many times to recover, and that's what we're seeing right now. Could I see the Heat going after him? Maybe, maybe not. I think they love him still, as a person. I think he still loves Miami. We know how much he loves Miami, but he's 33 years old. In terms of a basketball fit, doesn't make a ton of sense. But hey, it's Victor Oladipo. Why not go for it? I think it'd be an awesome storybook ending to his career if he could play out a few more seasons here on a pretty relatively high level, like he was doing before he got hurt. He was great, before he got hurt. So I'd be curious to see if he can get back to that, and hopeful as well. But that's really all I got to say for this video. So let me know which of these prospects you may be the most interested in. If there's anybody that I didn't name, make sure to drop them in the comments below because I'm very curious to hear what y'all think. Also, make sure to like the video and subscribe because I'm on a grind to hit 9,000 subs. And I'll see you on the next video. Peace out, everyone.
Look, pull up in your city trying to get that dead face. Do it on my own, I don't need no dead weight. Had to kill him off, yeah, I need a head space. This homegrown bitch don't offend me.